People in Ukraine's capital are struggling with limited access to water as missile strikes hit the country's infrastructure.
Tension in Brazil as outgoing President Jair Bolsonaro is still to concede victory to Lula da Silva.
U.S. President Joe Biden set to explore new taxes on the record-breaking profits of energy companies, though the change may struggle to pass through the country's Congress. Residents in Kiev queued to collect water after another wave of missile strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. It caused sweeping blackouts, and water supply is to be cut for 80% of the city's inhabitants. Ukrainian engineers are scrambling to restore power, but water was still a problem for 40% of the city by Monday night. One Ukrainian pensioner said, "This is a war with the civilian population. This is an incitement to submission. This is a war with values. Ukrainians respect freedom. We are not used to the fact that we are some kind of slaves." We heard a specific whistle, and after that, something flew over, and we heard the sound of the explosion. Why do they do it? They want to scare us. Russia's defense ministry has confirmed it carried out strikes on military command posts and energy sites in Ukraine. The attacks appear to have been in retaliation for an alleged attack by Ukrainian forces on Russia's Black Sea fleet off the coast of the annexed Crimean Peninsula. Russian TV has also shared footage of a destroyed hotel in Alchest in Ukraine. Moscow-backed authorities in the city say missiles fired by Ukrainian forces struck the building, leaving an undisclosed number of civilians trapped under the rubble.
The majority of his followers are mourning on social media. His political allies have acknowledged his defeat. Brazil's electoral chief has declared Sunday's poll for Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. But incumbent Jair Bolsonaro has yet to concede the presidency. The radio silence from the far-right leader is raising concern that he may not accept the result. Still, a minority of his supporters are denying reality and blocking roads. We won't accept losing what we have conquered so far. What we want is for what our flag says to prevail: order and progress. We will not accept the way, the result as it was. He was forcibly removed from his throne, and we are going to put him back in power with the strength that we have, the truckers. Meanwhile, the winner, Lula, has vowed to govern for all Brazilians and has been accepting congratulations from world leaders. Joe Biden said that he's looking forward to working together. And there was a surprise in-person support from the Argentinian leader. Lula will be sworn in on the 1st of January, but there's a 2-month transition period, which could be made very difficult from a potential sore loser.
In Brazil, left-wing candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has won the presidential election in a stunning comeback. The former president saw off the far-right incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. In a divisive campaign, Lula won 50.9% of the vote. And with me now to talk about what all of this means for Brazil and internationally is our very own J Marquez. Jay, great to have you with us. What does this moment then mean for the country, for Brazil? And talk to me about the significance as well about the swing back to the left here.
It's absolutely huge for the country politically, Helena. Lula da Silva, as we all know, is a very famous politician, not just in Brazil but around the world, and is the only man who's managed to get into the high office 3 times now, with a very short margin this time around. But looking back at Lula's history, he has a very rich history in which he was accused of corruption multiple times. He was arrested for it. His cases were overturned by the Supreme Court, but nevertheless, it's huge. It's a huge moment because Brazil is not, some say, is not just choosing a leader, but it's choosing its own path going forward. Obviously, President Bolsonaro's time in office has been marked by a lot of dividedness. and hate, to be fair. So it's an absolutely huge moment for Brazilians, not just in Brazil, but around the world, obviously. Vote in Brazil is compulsory, so it's interesting that 32 million people didn't show up to vote, even though it's compulsory. And that shows that for many people, none of the candidates represented a viable choice. And also there's some fear of violence in exercising your democratic right.
So now going forward then, we're going to be looking at waiting for that transfer of power. What can we expect?
Inauguration is on the 1st of January, so we've got exactly 2 months between now and the transfer of power. Traditionally, presidents, they hand over to each other. The outgoing president hands over a presidential sash to the incoming president. But it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to happen, because Bolsonaro and Lula, they don't look eye to eye. Even in the latest debates, they couldn't even stand next to each other. They don't look at each other. So that's going to be interesting to see with the ceremonial affairs that's meant to be taking place on the 1st of January. But in the next two months as well, it's going to be interesting to see how President Bolsonaro is going to react. There were hints that he wouldn't go easily. He hinted many times he didn't trust the electronic machines that we use in Brazil to vote. He attacked democratic institutions in Brazil, the Supreme Court, the Constitution itself. He's got some cases that he still has to answer to in attacking the Constitution itself. So next 2 months, very interesting.
U.S. President Joe Biden will explore new taxes on the record profits of oil companies, accusing them of war profiteering. He didn't use the exact phrase windfall tax, but the president wants companies such as ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell to help American consumers after reporting major profits from July to September.
Oil companies' record profits today are not because they're doing something new or innovative. Their profits are a windfall of war. The windfall from the brutal conflict that's ravaging Ukraine and hurting tens of millions of people around the globe. But rather than increasing their investments in America or giving American consumers a break, their excess profits are going back to their shareholders and they're buying back their stocks, so the executive pays are going to skyrocket. Give me a break. Enough is enough.
Like European citizens, Americans are grappling with rising prices across the board. But the strain at the pumps is considered to be one of the biggest issues for voters ahead of the midterm elections. A new tax on oil and gas companies is unlikely to pass through Congress, but Biden's call for one could raise Democrat prospects next week.
Iceland's Prime Minister has published her first novel. Katrin Jakobsdottir is a big fan of crime fiction, so it's natural her first book should be a thriller. She penned the story, entitled Reykjavik, along with best-selling Icelandic author Ragnar Jónasson, best known for the crime series Dark Iceland. They started writing the novel during the pandemic. Writing's a deep tradition in Iceland. 1 in 10 people living there reportedly publishes at least one book in their lifetime.
I have been reading crime fiction all my life, so it is kind of in my DNA, and I think every politician needs to have something to take his or her mind from the daily business of politics. Crime fiction is very therapeutic. It's really about solving crimes and finding justice, so it's a very therapeutic genre for me.
Reykjavik tells the story of an unsolved case of a girl who disappeared without a trace 30 years ago on a small island near the Icelandic capital. A local reporter traces the events back to 1986, when an historic summit between Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev was held in Reykjavik. TV host Egil Helgason introduced the book on his popular show.
Yes, it's a very pleasant read. It's somewhat reminiscent of Agatha Christie and the writers who don't have much violence in their books. This is a mystery, not a blood-dripping horror story.
The thriller was published in Iceland on October 25th and is already topping the bestseller list. It's being translated into several languages and will hit the shelves around Europe from summer 2023.